Good afternoon, everyone. A very warm welcome to everyone tuning in from different parts of Europe and beyond. So very welcome to our launch event for the Covenant of Companies for Climate and Energy, supporting small, medium-sized, and large enterprises in the race to net zero. So really the launch of our first call for technical assistance in 5 focus countries: Croatia, Finland, Italy, the Netherlands, and Poland. Delighted really today to have quite a stellar set of speakers from different organizations. And we'll, of course, give you more insights into this first call for technical assistance, what it is about, who is it for, how you can apply, and what the benefits are as well. My name is Stefan. I'm from Prospects, one of the consortium partners of the Covenant of Companies. And I'm also here with my colleague Linda from Prospects, who's our IT support and supporting moderator as well. Before I sort of give you an overview of the program, sort of house rules for this webinar, I'd like to give the floor just to Georg from DG Energy just to kick us off. Georg, please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, the welcome was already done, more or less, by you, Stefan. So thanks for the floor. I'm very delighted to hear that we have sort of 60 participants today from the respective countries mentioned by you, Stefan. That's great. It feels like a great start, in fact. So finally, in a way, we are kicking off, although the kickoff event of the Covenant of Companies will be somewhat later this year. But it feels like a small kickoff, really. And it is a kickoff, namely of the technical assistance. So I'm really looking forward to see this pilot project taking shape and adding value to those companies who stepped up, who asked for technical assistance, who are interested in what we do. And I guess that today we will really learn a lot about what the Covenant of Companies is potentially able to do for you, and would also invite you to share, of course, during your journey with the Covenant of Companies. Do feel free to share your views, your experiences with us, because as it is a pilot, it's really essential for us to have your, how can I say, undivided participation here, and your experiences. I think this falls very nicely into the current context, in fact, because what we really need to do, especially in the frame of Repower EU, and you all know what it is about, we need to do more about the local level, to say it in simple terms. Now, this project is for all sizes of companies, but it has a slight focus on small and mid-sized companies. So, and there's a reason for that. If you look into Repower EU, if you look into the most recent policy strategies as regards decarbonization, clean energy transition, and you name it. So essentially anything which is underneath the EU Green Deal, you will see that besides many large-scale, top-down, high-level funding and financing programs, there's always this question, and how do we make this happen on the ground? How do we make this happen in our daily lives? And how can citizens, companies, stakeholders at the local level actually take part in it? Now, the Covenant of Companies tries to give an answer to that with engagement of companies in this really challenging and exciting journey. And the time is high, as we know. We need to do something. So I'm really excited to see this happening today and to see it taking shape. And you see, talking about the Green Deal, I'm wearing it with my shirt. So I have a green shirt on today. Maybe a bit intentionally even. So, and green is also the color of hope, I believe. So let's hope this is a great meeting today. And yeah, wishing you all the best, a great meeting. And of course, I guess that you may, of course, pull me in. I will follow the whole meeting. And if there is a question directed to the Commission, I'm happy to answer these if I can. But otherwise, I feel you are in very good hands with the present team. So yeah, have fun, enjoy the meeting, enjoy the event. And now back to Stefan. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Georg. And I think it's an excellent way of framing this key challenge that we have ahead of us. How do we really make this real, and how do we make tangible impact on the ground? And one of the key pillars, of course, of the Covenant of Companies is through technical assistance, giving hands-on and practical assistance to companies that are selected in the end, but more about that later. Quick notes about the program for today. I mean, you received the program previously as well. We're in the welcome. I'll give you a quick introduction in just a second to the house rules as well and the setup for this event, but then we'll get straight into part one. Very, very happy to have Veronique Willems, Secretary General from SME United, and also member of the Covenant of Companies Consortium with us. But then also we have Pamela Jouvin, she's Director at SME Climate Hub and part of the We Mean Business Coalition, to really just explain to us and give us some more insights into the context and the urgency of supporting companies to net zero. And then part two, we get straight into the first call for technical assistance. Very happy to have Elisa and Lawrence from ThinkE with us today, also partners of the Covenant of Companies Consortium. We will have time for Q&A, and then we will also have some conclusions and wrap up towards the end. Quick note, so on the logistical side, IT points, so please use the chat for your questions and comments. And we will definitely pick those up during the Q&A session at the end. If you can specify also to whom your question is, that will help us as moderators match those. And also by way of intro and good practice, perhaps, if people can already put in the chats where they're tuning in from, their name, their organization, and where they're tuning in from, that would be excellent. Secondly, microphones are off by default. This is a webinar. We want to have people come in very flexibly as well, but we will allow you to take the floor during the Q&A session if you'd like. You can turn your camera on if you'd like as well. I've seen some people do it, so many thanks. Makes it much more enjoyable as an event. And then lastly, if you're posting on social media, Twitter or LinkedIn, please just use the hashtag Covenant of Companies. Last point here is that we will be sharing this recording afterwards, but also the slides as well. So you will definitely have those after the event. So without further ado, I'd like to just give the floor to Veronique Willems from SME United to just talk a bit about the EU framework and how this can facilitate SMEs' energy transition. Veronique, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Stefan. I took as a first best practice, make sure you turn on the microphone, that they don't have to say you're on mute. Maybe briefly also introduce SME United for those who do not know us yet. We are the Association of Crafts and SMEs in Europe. We represent national SME organizations from all European member states, apart from the Czech Republic. And we also have non-EU member states like the UK, which is at the moment the most famous one, I think, but also Norway, Ukraine, Turkey, and Andorra. Apart from that, we also have sectoral organizations from SME sectoral organizations at EU level that join us, for instance, from the construction sector, transport sector, food sector. And I think the first two are also very important ones, but don't forget the others for the whole climate change challenges that we are meeting at the moment. Here, I like your referral to the green. It's indeed also the color of hope. I would say I'm in black and white today, but certainly our topic isn't black and white. There are a lot of different shades of gray when we discuss energy transition and climate change. So happy to be part today as well of the program and make sure that we can hit this off in a good way. I probably don't tell anything new when I say that SMEs are the big bulk of companies in Europe. The European DG Grow presented this week their SME performance review on 2021-2022. And again, we see that 22 million companies out of the 24-ish in Europe are small companies. And maybe even more important, 93% of all companies have less than 10 employees. And that also immediately gives a good view on what is the capacity of a small company and of an entrepreneur to tackle the energy transition and see how to move forward. SMEs, nevertheless, are a big part of the solution to achieve the decarbonization of our society, because they operate in eco industries. They are developing innovative new clean energy technologies and also export them all over the globe. On the other hand, we also know that there is still a big majority of our SMEs that operate in the linear mode, let's say, and who request accompanying measures at national and at European level to go through that green and energy transition in a successful way. With the current situation at hand, meaning on the one hand, the climate change speeding up. We had last year the IPCC report, which had a quite alarming message saying we really need to start moving and make action and have changes on the ground. And on the other hand, I've always said this project is very timely, because with energy prices rising steeply, our SMEs are already very inclined to look for change and how they can mitigate energy costs. I think it's clear that this is a timely project and that we have to move forward in a good way. Energy efficiency and renewable energies are really at the focus, but we have to also make sure that we don't jeopardize competitiveness of our companies in Europe in comparison to the rest of the world. And for that, we see as SME United two avenues to work on. The one side is the legal and the policy framework, where we have to make sure that we build a robust framework conditions towards the future. And on the other hand, we are also going to highlight a few measures that should help SMEs to make that energy transition in a positive way. If I first deal with the legal and the policy framework, the main aim should be that we can ensure the necessary amount of renewable energy or energy in general at any time and at a reasonable price for our small companies in Europe, making sure that indeed they have the energy they require to do and to make their business function. That requires first that we have a good production of energy and of renewable energy. And we see in different member states at the moment that the permitting procedures do hamper to move forward with that. So making sure that we foster the production of renewable energies and that the permitting procedures are also adapted to this is a first condition, let's say. A second condition is to ensure that we continue our energy and climate diplomacy. I've already mentioned it. We must ensure that we keep the competitiveness of our companies also at a high level in comparison to global economy. And in that way, making sure that we discuss with other trade partners or with other partners in general our energy provision and the renewable energy provision more specifically is a very important element. If you look at actions that are going on in Africa on renewable energy, on sun-powered energy, that can be a very important example. Especially since we see that at a certain point, the European Union should only make up of 10% of the global emissions. It's key that we also take on board the other continents, let's say. A third condition is making sure that there is interconnection, transmission and distribution networks that function well within the European Union. And we still have a lot of ground to cover there. We also have to make sure that we multiply the storage possibilities for renewable energy to make sure that when energy is produced, we can also store it if it's not immediately used at that moment. A fourth point is the sector system integration that should be effectively enabled to allow optimization of the energy system as a whole, and making sure that we are not looking at separate sectors and making efficiency gains there, but that we also can check how certain sectors can contribute to efficient energy use, one linked to the other. And then a fifth point put forward is a massive investment in R&D and innovation. We know that we already have a lot of new and innovative technologies, but there's still a lot to be done there. And making sure that we do that in a technology neutral way and also looking towards all different forms of alternative energy will be important to make sure that our companies can tap into the right energy in the future. So in short, the enabling framework or the policy and the legal framework is making sure that we foster the production of renewable energies by making sure that we have the right permitting procedures. It can energy and climate diplomacy, making sure that it's not only Europe moving forward, but that we also take the rest of the world along with us, or that we make sure that we also get best practices from other continents. Third one is the interconnectivity, transmission and distribution networks and storage possibilities. A fourth one, sector and system integration. And then the fifth one is R&D and innovation. If I then move towards the next point, which measures do we need to support SMEs in their energy transition? The first and most important one, I believe, is making sure that they have the necessary information and technical assistance close to where their business is. If an entrepreneur doesn't know how to get started on the energy transition, they are more likely not to do anything than that they will take action. And that's also why the Covenant of Companies has been created, to make sure that we raise further awareness, that we create know-how and information channels, and that we in that way can give a real boost to SMEs information supply on energy transition and climate change mitigation in general. So that's the first one. The second one is providing them access to finance, because if they are going to turn around their business model and their energy sources, they will need investments, and those have to be financed. And as you know, we are slowly coming out of one crisis, but have already tumbled into the next one, from COVID towards now energy commodity prices, the Russian invasion in Ukraine. Many of our SMEs are highly indebted due to the measures they had to take during COVID. And so their investment capacity is really small at the moment. Making sure that they have access to finance and that they can find really good financing alternatives will be crucial if we want them to make the necessary investments. A third one is upskilling and reskilling the entrepreneurs themselves, their teams, to make the energy transition in their company, and also making sure that we have the necessary qualified staff to make all those investments take place in practice. The renovation wave is a very crucial initiative from the European Commission. But if we don't have skilled staff for construction companies, they will not be able to, for instance, isolate companies and houses. So we need to make sure that the necessary skills are there. Fourth one is specific incentives at European level, but especially also at national and local and regional level, making sure that, for instance, tax rebates and so on incentivize companies to take the investments. And then a fifth point is capacity building for SME organizations, particularly at local level, because many SMEs turn to them as a first point of contact to get information, to know where to look for more information. So making sure those SME organizations have the necessary, at least basic information in their hands, potentially even a full process on how to guide companies, is a crucial element as well. And then concluding on the measures that are required, legal certainty and simplicity is a guiding principle at SME United. If you change the targets every 6 months, companies don't know where to go at which time. If we want them to reach a certain target in 2030, they need to know now, today, what the target will be, so that they can make a choice on, these are the technologies that will help my company get to that target, and that they can make now that investment, so that they can really start getting actions rolling towards that target in 2030, which is only 8 years away from us. And simplicity, also very important, because if it gets too complicated, if it gets too difficult to understand, then an entrepreneur will also likely just say, okay, I don't know how to do this. And that's also where, again, the Covenant of Companies comes in, to make sure that we provide the necessary information. And then I would like to conclude by saying why SME United joined the consortium and the application of this consortium to build up the Covenant of Companies for Climate and Energy. First of all, we want to make sure that what opportunities SMEs see and which challenges they are confronted with across the European Union to make that energy transition and successfully embrace it. So that was the first objective that we had. A second objective is providing the free tailored technical assistance to companies and also to their organizations so that we can already have a snowball effect starting. And then a third point is that we will be able to, based on the pilot project, as Georg also mentioned, give recommendations to the Commission on future initiatives to ensure that those are really fruitful and contribute to the challenges we are facing. We see that the results of the initial survey and the interviews carried out already give a first confirmation of our feelings and our ideas. And we are very happy that with this call, we can further build know-how and experience to make this a success also towards the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Veronique. And I think you outlined very nicely sort of all the different challenges and things we need to do both at a macro level and at a micro level as well. And also Lawrence and Elise, I'm sure will sort of detail a bit more how that practical and hands-on assistance, what that would look like when we go to implementation. That's for companies indeed, but also as you mentioned, it's also capacity building for SME organizations and those intermediaries, right, as another target group here as well. So thanks very much, Veronique, for that overview. I'm very happy then to introduce our second speaker to talk a bit about the context and the urgency of why we need to support companies, in particular SMEs, in their race to net zero. So very happy to introduce again Pamela Houvin from SME Climate Hub. Pamela, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Stefan. Thank you for having me today. And it was really great to hear Veronique paint a really, really helpful picture of what's happening at EU level and especially what's needed at in terms of policy change. Now, I'm going to take a bit of a step back with my presentation because, you know, as Stefan said, I wanted to set the scene when it comes to SMEs and climate action, explain a little bit where we're at, but also provide a specific example of an ecosystem of support for inspiration. And this example is the SME Climate Hub, so the initiative that I'm heading up, and you know, which will also be partnering with the EU Covenant of Companies. So let me share my screen. I have a few slides that I wanted to use for this, so hopefully you should be able to see this, and I'll go into presentation mode.
Yeah, perfect. Go for it, Pamela.
Great. So let's start maybe with the wider context. So, you know, when you're building an ecosystem of support, the first thing that you need to do is understand the context, the audience that you're trying to serve, and what the needs are really. So there are some, you know, stats that I believe we're all aware of and that have to do with the role that SMEs play when it comes to climate action, both as part of communities and, you know, Veronique provided some really interesting stats for the EU itself. On a global level, we know that SMEs make up 90% of businesses worldwide and that they employ over 2 billion people. So that's really the role that they play at community level. But they're also crucial players within supply chains. And I often use a stat that comes from a CDP report about large corporates that explains that for big companies, supply chain emissions are 11.4 times higher than operational emissions. And as we know, SMEs are a big part of supply chain. So really, SMEs are part of both, you know, the challenge and the solution. We also know that they need to adapt a lot. About half, 50% of SMEs never reopen after a disaster. So we all collectively need to work towards building resilience in the SME community. And we've conducted our own research. We ran a survey across our SME community to get a better understanding of the challenges that SMEs face beyond, obviously, you know, policy. And we were able to identify 3, you know, buckets of challenges, so to speak, of barriers that they face. The first one has to do with a lack of resources. You know, that might be capacity, time, money. The second one has to do with the lack of skills and know-how. There's a lot of information out there that's available for people who can look into it. But when you're starting from scratch, it's difficult to understand where to look, which players you can trust and which tools you can use. And then the third bucket really revolves around the lack of incentives. And these can be financial incentives. We've talked about this a little bit, but also commercial incentives. And as you can see on the right, we have a graph that shows some of the insights that we were able to collect. And you'll see that, for example, the lack of skills is something that has come up a lot among our SMEs. 63% of them felt that they didn't have the right skills to take climate action. So, with the SME Climate Hub, we've taken all these insights to try and build an ecosystem of support that would address some of these challenges. So let's use this as an example, and I'll build on it a little bit. So the SME Climate Hub was designed as a one-stop shop. So basically a platform where SMEs can do three things. They can access free, best-in-class tools to take action, but they can also make a commitment that is aligned with science, so with the 1.5 goal of the Paris Agreement, and that allows them to join the UN Race to Zero. That's a big part of who we are. We are the official pathway for SMEs to join the race. And the hub also allows SMEs to benefit from specific incentives, communication and marketing incentives at the moment, but we're also working on financial and commercial incentives. And all of this is to make sure that SMEs can fully reap the benefits of climate action that go from gaining a competitive advantage all the way to growing their business brand and really just future-proofing their business, getting access to funding, reducing costs. And right now we have over 4,000 SMEs from over 100 countries that have made the commitment, but many more that are also using our tools. So, we're talking about ecosystems of support, and the reason why I wanted to highlight this example, the hub, is because we are both a digital ecosystem of support, but we've also built a partner ecosystem. And that's where, players like the EU Covenant of Companies really have an absolutely key role to play. So if we look at the digital ecosystem, and, for those of you who are curious, you can have a look at the hub itself online. We've tried to build a journey tailored to SMEs to make sure that we could support them as best as possible. So an SME that goes onto the hub can make the commitment immediately if they know exactly what they need to do. But otherwise, we walk them through this specific journey. So we use tools to help them understand where they stand. I'll show you what some of these tools look like in a minute. Then we encourage them to publicly commit once they have a good understanding of what this means. And then this helps them take action also because making the commitment unlocks additional resources and incentives for them. Now, I said that I would tell you a bit more about our tools very quickly. These are some of the tools that are available for SMEs on the hub. We have a carbon calculator developed with some big names that you can see here that asks very simple questions and uses spend data to provide SMEs with estimates of their scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, and that's quite unique in this space. But we also have a what we call Climate Fit, a climate education course that we developed with BSR and Cambridge, and it's basically Climate Action 101 for an SME. So you don't know where to start. This is a free course similar to the calculator. All of this is free of charge. This is a free self-paced course that you can take that covers 7 modules that go from governance and strategy all the way to communication that help you understand what climate action is all about for your business. And on top of that, we have a financial support guide to help SMEs understand where they can get financial support. There again with practical case studies and tools, and also a library of external tools that is created by Oxford University and that brings together many other resources that exist out there that have been developed by third parties and that SMEs can use to dig a little deeper for those who really have the time and capacity to do so. And in the pipeline, we have a few more things, such as an interactive reporting tool, but also specific action models that will help SMEs understand which actions to prioritize based on their emissions profile. So this is a very short summary of the digital ecosystem that we're currently building with our partners. But we know that this is not enough, right? So you can provide automated free tools online, but you also need to bring SMEs to the platform to make sure that they understand what this is about and that they understand the business case behind it. And that's why we've also been working on building a partner ecosystem. There you go, for the hub. And until now, we've been doing this at a global level. So, on this slide, you see a summary of the different partners that we've been working with. So we have obviously our strategic partners. So again, big names. These are helping us really build the platform, develop some of the tools. But in order to bring SMEs to the platform, we're also working with the other categories of partners, starting from corporate partners, especially a group called the 1.5 supply chain leaders. And these are big companies that have made ambitious commitments that include their supply chain, so scope 3 emissions, and that are using the hub to engage their SME suppliers. And we're learning a lot through that process. We're running pilots with them and are hoping to create toolkits for others to use as a result. We also have what we call outreach partners, and these are big, business associations, SME networks, or even media organizations such as, Eddie and We Don't Have Time, that are helping us spread the word. So we're very active on social media. We run a number of communications during the year that we design as community activation campaigns, so providing SMEs and businesses with assets that they can use to promote their own work and progress and commitments. And working with these partners really been helping us a lot. And on top of this, we're also building bridges with other big institutions. Now, what we've seen, however, and this all started with a campaign that we ran with the UK government in the lead up to COP26, is that it's really important to also provide SMEs with resources that will resonate with them at a local level, that are reflective of, the reality that they're dealing with on the ground. And this obviously links back to all that Veronique was saying earlier. And this is the reason why, on top of our, global ecosystem, so to speak, and the global platform that we've been building, we're also starting to operate more at a local level and really building partnerships at national level to see how we can best support SMEs. As I said, this started with the UK government, but we're now also working in Spain. I'll tell you more about this in a minute. And we have 2 other strategic targets outside Europe for this year, which are the US, where we will be working with America as well, and also India, where we're building a consortium of partners. But let's focus obviously on what's happening at European level. And I wanted to highlight 2 examples that we've been learning a lot from. So the first one, I literally just mentioned it, is the campaign that we ran with the UK government. So technically not the EU, but still, in the region. And what we saw with this campaign is that it was, first of all, absolutely essential to provide country-specific content. For example, we added a UK landing page onto the hub, but also to work with local stakeholders. So the government set up a task force with large corporations, but also organized regional events through regional business centers to share best practices that, again, would make sense at a local level. And so that also meant working with local communities and local authorities. And on top of that, they were also able to work with industry associations to provide sector-specific support that is highlighted on the landing page. So again, specific guidelines for a set number of sectors that we thought would really be interested in this work. And so this is a good example of local ecosystem, again, built with an anchor partner such as, the UK government. But we've been experimenting with another model, which is a consortium-led model in Spain. So we launched a Spanish version of the hub that's going to be also very helpful to expand into Latin America. And in Spain, we decided to work with the support of the Spanish government, but to build a consortium of partners that also includes business associations and big corporates such as, the ones you see here, Telefónica, BBVA, Iberdrola. And so with these people, we're obviously working focusing on outreach, just to make sure that we can communicate about our activities more generally across the country, but we're also forming a local steering committee with representatives from these different organizations, again, to make sure that we can tailor our narrative and maybe add specific content to the hub for Spanish SMEs. So these are two models that we'll try and replicate in other geographies, and both, have many advantages, and really it depends on the context. The model that you choose depends on the context. But the most important takeaway here is that we've seen how much of a difference it makes to work with local partners to really provide specific content to SMEs. And we're also aware of our own limitations, which is the fact that we operate a global platform that is designed to be scalable and so to provide automated support. So it's really important also to join forces with other actors such as the Covenant of Companies, who can provide really hands-on support, technical assistance that will help SMEs go one step further for the ones who can afford it. So again, I wanted to provide this example because I think it's a good first step. But then it also shows the need to go even further and work hand in hand with SMEs and other intermediaries on the ground. So with that, I think I'm going to pass the mic back to Stefan so that he can introduce the next speaker and section of the event.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks, Pamela. And indeed, so I think you outlined nicely sort of, what support ecosystems could look like, how they could work, and you have some models here already. And I think, we're trying to achieve the same things. We're doing also very similar things. So I very much look forward to continued collaboration as well, really trying to figure out how we can really support SMEs in their energy and climate transition. So thank you very much, Pamela. Then without further ado, I'd love to get to the technical assistance launch. So what this hands-on support for SMEs and large companies would actually look like. So I'll give the floor to Elisa and Lawrence from ThinkE. Please, if you have any questions or comments, please use the chat. And then, of course, we will pick them up during the Q&A. And on that note, Drina, already, thank you very much for your comments already in the chat, which we answered. But please, Elisa and Lawrence, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Stefan. And thank you, Veronique and Pamela, for your interesting presentations. Today we'll be actually zooming in on the actual call for technical assistance, which started last week. Today is the official launch. So I'm Elise, I'm from ThinkE. We'll be coordinating this technical assistance, and I'm here today with Lawrence, and together we're going to show you pretty much this application procedure, what the technical assistance will include, and the different steps that we'll be taking. The assistance will be provided between September and December this year, and next year we'll be starting the second call. So today we're really focusing on this first call. First questions first, of course, who can apply? We talked about it a bit before as well. We are focusing on 5 focus member states, EU member states, for this first call: Finland, the Netherlands, Poland, Italy, and Croatia. The reason for this is to really focus during this pilot phase on a few countries, get the best lessons learned, and optimize our technical assistance this way. But we do want to cover a range of different countries and a range of different levels of experiences, which is why we have these 5 countries that, in our opinion, represent the most diversity in terms of geographical range, but also experience and types of intermediaries that can help us. We also think that these countries, the technical assistance that we can give through this call will be replicable for other member states and other companies within the chosen member states. The Covenant of Companies is focused on companies and primarily SMEs. So it's open for SMEs and groups of SMEs, such as SMEs or companies that are co-located on an industrial site or share an office park can also apply. And also authorities such as local municipalities or enablers such as network association are also eligible to apply if they need direct support for assisting their companies with the energy transition or decarbonization. We will also be giving indirect support to intermediaries, which Lawrence will speak about a bit further down. Our methodology is as follows. It's quite similar to what Pamela demonstrated as well, with taking it step by step through these through your level of experience. But in order to optimize our support, when we assess the applications, we also look at the level of experience and which phase companies are in. So this methodology is called Explore, Shape, Act. And this is really focused on companies and groups of companies. So if you're an authority or an enabler, this doesn't apply. But what we look at is, are you in the early stages? Have you not even started and you want to know where to start, for example, then you get categorized in the explorers phase. If you have already taken some steps but need some help to take further action, then we put you in the shape phase. And if you've already taken a lot of steps but have a high level of ambition and kind of need support to take it even further, there's the act phase to help you there. You don't need to know by yourself what this is. The application procedure takes you through these steps as well, and we help find out in which phase your company is before we assess the applications. And this is so that we can really cater the support to your level. We also provide a menu of services. So there's about 17 options that you can choose from. The idea is to pick one service that you would like. That way we can match you with the correct expert in our assessments and see within the covenant of also among all the applications who needs what and where can we help where. There's about 17 options, but if you don't see one that matches your needs, you can also fill in yourself what it is that you're looking for. Just to give you an idea today, it's quite a full slide, so that's why I didn't present it straight away. Here is a bit of an idea of what you can ask for. So it's quite a range from energy audits to plans to science-based targets. This list is also in the application procedure. And that was it from my side. I pass the mic on to Lawrence.
Yes, so then we continue with the application process. This we can roughly split up into 3 steps: the preparation, the submission itself, and the technical assistance agreement. During the preparation stage, we advise you to read our guide for applicants, which you'll see is very much alike to the presentation Elise and I am giving right now. So all the information we are transmitting now, you can also find there and more. And the second part we advise is to follow this webinar. So you're all already doing that, so that's great. And then we have a second webinar, which is focused more on the intermediaries on the 7th of July as a last preparation step. Then the submission itself. For the submission itself, you will have a survey which you have to fill out. One of the parts will be a self-assessment that you can fill out to find out in 5 questions whether you're in the explore, shape, or act phase, so that we can work further with your answer there. And you'll, especially as a company or a group of companies, needs a few numbers and documents, as in you would need your certificate of registration and your VAT number. If you have this ready, the entire process only takes a few minutes. It's not a complicated procedure, but we would like to know who you are, what your goals are, and what you are already dedicating to this cause. So then we can see very well what you're doing and what we can do together. After that, we will select 50 countries, entities. This can be companies, it can be authorities, enablers, but 50 that we will be working further with for direct technical support. There, they will first get a meeting with the relevant experts based on the requested assistance. Together with the experts, we can look at the scope, the timing, and the priorities that need to be set specifically for you. If we agree on this, then we can sign the technical assistance agreement, which will be the basis for all the assistance given to you from the consortium. Now, on the next slide, we then see the evaluation criteria for the applications. So we are only selecting 50 during this first call because we have to limit it since it's a test procedure for us as well to see where we are and where the problems can arise. So we will take into account the explore, shape, or act phase so that you have a nice mix from companies that are in a different states, different phase of their process. Replication potential is an important one, of course, since the more potential for replication, the higher the effect will be from our efforts. It's a climate and energy incentive, so the impacts on climate and energy are of course important. We will not be looking at whether a baker gets better sandwiches afterwards. It's all based on their energy and climate potentials. And then, yeah, the availability of our own experts. So we have to match a bit the applications with what we can provide, so that we have an optimum there. Then, out of all the applications, we will try to find a nice portfolio that will give a good diverse menu of countries, companies, and entities from the different phases, different countries, and different requested assistances, so that we can get a good overview of where the problems are and if in all situations our approach is working the way we want it. Then on the next slides, we also see that we don't only have the direct technical assistance, we also will be giving out indirect technical assistance. So if you're not chosen, it's not that we're not going to help you. In the first call, we're just limited. We will provide country-specific information sheets, which will already help you by directing you to other incentives that might be relevant for you, or funding schemes where you can apply for. That way you can, at least in the meantime, find your own way in this course towards your goal. We will also be inviting companies to become CCCE followers. Then you will be receiving invitations to webinars and trainings that are based on the assistance you have requested. So those will be based on lessons learned from other technical assistance we have given in the project. Then we have the intermediaries. We have already been talked about a little bit. So this can be authorities or national bodies, sector organizations, but we would like to involve them in all the steps. We are involving them by asking them ourselves. They can apply to be involved, but also, as for example, an SME, it might be interesting for you to ask your sector organization to also be involved in the process, since they might be able to also give some assistance in translation or any other service. So we are asking them to help us promote. We're also trying to make them present during the scope definition meetings, so that it can also be made sure that the technical assistance given is relevant to maybe other members in the same sector. During the technical assistance themselves, we will also involve them, and of course, their evaluation of the project is also important to see how well we have done. Now, the intermediaries can also apply. So they might be part of the project, not as an applicant themselves, but as an intermediary, really, but also the same authorities, enablers can apply themselves to also get assistance, but then we are giving them assistance in supplying their services to their members. And then the last part will be the evaluation of the project. We will do that to a satisfaction survey, amongst others, to apply all different parts. So the application process will be checked whether it's accessible and clear to everybody. The support itself, whether it's a good way of working and the way we're doing it. And yeah, if the project really has impact and how much impact we can expect. Then based on that, we will provide new recommendations and determine the next steps so that we can launch a second call in March of next year. And then we can show the link already for the second webinar. You can scan it if you want. It will also be made available through the same channels as this webinar normally. So everybody that should be there will also be able to find it easily.
Thank you, Lawrence, and thank you, Elise. Let's open the floor in just a second to see if there's any comments or questions from the floor. Also, if you'd like to use the chat function, of course, please do so, and we'll pick up those comments as we go along. While sort of people are thinking, maybe a question already to Lawrence and Elise. So this call we now, of course, have 5 focus countries that you mentioned. The next call, the second call, would take place in March 2023. Will there be focus countries or not? Any thoughts there? What the focus could be there? Oh, Elisa, you're on mute. Sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, I think this first call will be very important as well to get a better sense of what kind of demand is out there, what kind of support we should be giving. And I think that will be relevant input to also assess in January, February of next year what will be necessary for the second call. And that includes which countries to focus on. It'll definitely not be only the same 5. We will definitely reevaluate because in the end, it's a European covenant of companies. So it's definitely our intention to look at more countries, but which ones and how many, it's too early to tell.
Great, thanks, thanks, Elisa. Also, of course, you mentioned the possibility for individual companies, but also groups of companies, and then the broad category of intermediaries that they are able to apply. How do you foresee sort of a differentiation in the kind of support services that you'd be offering them? How would that be? How would that be decided?
I think I want to look at Lawrence for that one.
Yes, so in the menu of services, it's already specified which services we see fit for which type of applicants. And of course, in the scope definition meeting, there will also always be place for a little bit of discussion in which direction the specific technical assistance will go.
Great. So very much through these discussions that you'll agree on what kind of support services would be offered. Excellent. Thank you both. I'm just doing a check on the chat if anyone wants to take the floor. Maybe a very practical question, if you could put the link to the call for technical assistance in the chat, then people can, of course, click on it. I know you already sent through or you showed the QR code for the next webinar, but the link for the technical assistance itself would be very, very useful, I'm sure, for our participants. Any questions or comments? I still have one tricky question up my sleeve for Elisa and Lawrence, but I'll just wait if there's something coming from the floor. Great, thank you, Lawrence, for putting in the link to the call for technical assistance in the chat. So for those who haven't seen it yet, please click on it, and this is really your platform, whether you're an intermediary or a company, for you to apply. Tricky question then, perhaps, Elisa and Lawrence. Language. Of course, this webinar has been in English, but what would that look like for the technical assistance itself? You mentioned, Lawrence, though, about sort of the capacities from different experts. That capacity, is that also something that is also linked to language capacity?
Yes, we have some capacities ourselves for different languages. Of course, it's limited. We can't do everything in every language at the same time, but depending on the specific applications, we can try and match it as much as possible, of course. Also, the intermediaries might be a good help there to translate or to translate indeed services towards the entities that have applied.
Great, thanks, thanks, Lawrence. I don't see any comments from the chat, but just to recap again, you will receive the recording, you will receive the presentations, of course. If there's any questions afterwards, we'd be very, very happy to have those. We're very much available. So the call for technical assistance has been opened, as Lawrence also mentioned, and it will be running until August. So for those who are going on a holiday break in August, perhaps submit before you leave for holidays. If there's no further questions or comments, I think we can. There's a hand raised still by Elisa. Elisa, please, you wanted to come in.
It's maybe one small comment about the fact that this is in the summer. We have an EU survey, as you see, that Lawrence sent, which is where you can apply, and it shouldn't take more than 10 to 15 minutes to apply. So until August, until the 31st of August, so there is still the whole month of August as well. So please don't let the summer break be a reason not to apply.
Thanks, Elise. I know you and Lawrence have been putting in quite some work to make sure that this application process is sort of very streamlined and is not forms after forms that you have to fill in. So great, thanks. That's really useful. Unless there's any There's a question from Mark coming in for the chat. Where can we find the requirements to apply for it? Maybe Elise, you can talk Mark through the requirements again, how you can, who's eligible for applying, and then also maybe referring him to where he can find that information afterwards. And there's a follow-up question from Mark. What do you consider?
I can answer both. Yeah.
Please,
so the
go for it.
requirements are in the guide for applicants. That's on the link that we sent. Is pretty much the information that we shared today. The eligible applicants are, as I said, SMEs, groups of SMEs, authorities, or enablers. An SME, we use the EU definition of an SME, which is, if I remember correctly, up to 250 employees. Which is a bit smaller than the global SME definition. So I think the SME Climate Hub, for instance, has a much wider net to cast than we do with this call. What are some criteria? Yeah, I'm also going to look at Lawrence, who's more into the content. I think we're really looking for a range of different experiences, but we're also not trying to be restrictive at all. So for example, it's open to all sectors, all levels of experience, because this really is a phase where we're trying to get also a feeling for what are the problems that our SMEs and groups of SMEs faced with today. That's also part of the input for us. So it's not a strict requirement. It's more that if we get a lot more than 50 applicants, we then have to make an assessment based on our available expertise to be able to give support. So what kind of support is everyone asking for? And what can we offer in these 3 months? Should you not be selected because there was too many applicants, then as Lawrence said, there's also the indirect support through information sheets, through webinars, but also through the intermediaries. We will also be getting information, disseminating a lot of information. And there's of course always the second call. If you've already gone support or if you've already applied, we'll have to see as well what that means for the second call, but this isn't the last chance to apply either. That's more or less what I can summarize off the top of my head. And again, on the link that we sent, you can always click through the survey to get a feel for what the questions are. And in the guide for applicants is more detailed information, which is just a hyperlink. Once you open that link, it's another hyperlink on the page. More information. There you go, Lawrence. Yeah,
thanks,
put it in the
thanks,
chat
Elise,
as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Lawrence. Indeed, just to add the the comprehensive guide to applicants. So, Mark, all the answers to your questions that Elise just recapped are also in there. And with that, unless there's any final points, I don't see any. I'm very happy to be able to give. Veronique, you wanted to still. I see you raise your hand. Please.
Maybe very briefly, I put in the chat also the SME definition at European level. It is 250 employees, but there comes some additional, and you also have to demonstrate independence. So if you are X%, I think more than 25% in hands of an investment fund or something like that, you're also not seen as an SME in the European Union.
Yeah, so there's some additional conditions to the 250 employees one. Yes, thank you, Veronique. So on that note, so Rod, still a question from Rod. There are a lot of projects under Horizon Europe and Horizon 2020 related to SMEs. How are you letting them know about your covenant and services? I think I can do this one. We are trying to build networks and collaborations with those projects in particular, Rod. So we, for example, had a roundtable in April where we had several organizations working on projects on Horizons on this topic. So people with a lot of practical expertise in supporting SMEs and companies in energy and climate. And we were able to really distill a lot of learnings from them, what works less well, and to be able to really integrate those already into this design for the call for technical assistance that Elisa and Lawrence have just been presenting. And indeed, maybe Georg, if you wanted to chime in with a commission perspective, any thoughts from your side, please?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not fishing for the floor here. No, really not, because I'm listening closely to what's being said. Maybe just offering a number of additional thoughts. When I was saying at the introduction stage that we really need to think about the local level. So SMEs do represent the local level very much, because most of the SMEs we know are embedded in some kind of local, yeah, I use the word ecosystem. Don't throw stones at me for that, but it's sort of a fancy term always used. But I'm also thinking about this sort of very close proximity to other projects I'm dealing with and we are dealing with. For example, the Covenant of Mayors. There is no surprise that the Covenant of Companies actually is looking into some kind of similar approach to companies as we have for cities. And that's simply because there is this local proximity. So this is just an additional thought. I do not want to sidetrack the discussion today, really not. It's just that you keep that in the back of your heads, that this is not sort of an isolated effort we're doing here. We are truly looking also into the very context SMEs are operating in. And the local context, very much the urban context, but also small cities, municipalities and that offer a whole lot of opportunities, because we have a lot of infrastructure projects. If SMEs take part in that, or they offer services as part of these projects, they can also do something about their sort of carbon footprint as part of these projects, for example. So there's always a way of including SMEs. I just wanted to raise that because I forgot at the beginning, so that we are not necessarily only concentrating at the SME term or company term per se, but that we also contextualize it a bit. Like co-located companies, but really truly also companies which are well embedded in their local context. And so we are fully aware of that. Just wanted to say this. And we are, of course, building synergies across the board to enable more engagement of companies across the board as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Georg. And I think indeed we're just getting started with sort of building our networks here as well. There's a very important question also coming in from Rod in the chats. In the application process, who's actually the decision maker? Is DG Energy involved, or does the consortium make a final decision? Elisa, Lorenz, and maybe Georg, I can ask you to come in as a final one. But Elisa and Lorenz, how would that decision making or selection process, what would that look like?
Lisa, can you help me out in this?
Lawrence and I must confess we had to jump in relatively last minute today for this presentation, so I'm afraid I don't have the answer to this one either.
Maybe I can help out a bit, at least, sharing some thoughts here. I think that the team will come with a methodology for the actual assessment. And I would very much advocate for putting these criteria transparently online as soon as we have a website, so that everybody who's signing up for the Covenant of Companies really knows what they are committing to. So that's number one. Number two is then, as soon as we have these transparent, let's say, criteria out, and we can also share them in advance as soon as we approach the evaluation, like via social media, via the sharing platforms we're exploring at the moment. But that is, in my view, or should be a very transparent process. If and to which extent DG Ener, that is me or maybe relevant colleagues close by, will be involved in the evaluations, I can't tell. I can tell that, for example, for the mission on cities, which is maybe a bit prominent, there was also an evaluation using external experts. So in a way, the experts we have in the consortium, but also potentially external experts we involve in the work of the Covenant of Companies will help with assessing these. I would then expect that there is sort of a last word also for Commission colleagues, so that we have a look, but that we would other than that, not necessarily get involved in the actual evaluations, just to make sure this is impartial, fully transparent, and done by the experts and not like by me, because I'm not necessarily an expert in the field. I just happen to have this excellent team, which helps me to run this project. I hope this is kind of answering the questions, but I think we will be soon out with more detailed information on this. Thank you.
No, and indeed, I think Lawrence also showed the slide with the different criteria as well as a starting point. Thank you, Georg. If there's no final question, and thanks Rod and thanks Mark also for the those final thoughts. I think those were excellent questions as well. If no final points or questions, so again, warm welcome to warm recommendation to everyone to have a look, not just have a look at the call for applications, but actually fill it in. As Elisa mentioned, it's a very streamlined process. Perhaps it's nice also to do during the summer when you're sitting and relaxing in the sun. So it will run until the end of August, and so we hope to see many of you apply, whether you're a company, whether you're an SME, or you're an intermediary. There are many different segments that we would love to support with our technical assistance program. So on that note, I wanted to just thank everyone, all our participants, for tuning in, for listening to us today. Also, big thank, of course, to our speakers, Veronique from SME United, Pamela from SME Climate Hub, but also Elisa and Lawrence, who indeed had to jump in quite last minute, but I think they both did an excellent job. So thank you so much, Elisa, Lawrence, and all of our speakers and all the participants. Wishing you a very pleasant afternoon. You will be receiving shortly from us the presentation and the recordings. If you have any final thoughts, please do tweet under the hashtag Covenant of Companies. We will be engaging on social media afterwards as well. So again, an excellent afternoon, and we will definitely be in touch over the next couple of weeks and months. Thank you, everyone.